So, 3 wishes. I want them to be good. What would you wish for?
Me? No one's ever asked me that before. Well, in my case, forget it.
What?
No, I can't.
Come on, tell me.
Freedom.
Okay, so for our main topic today, I'm trying to do something a little different with how we approach this because this is a big one. I feel like not just for us, but for most of our listeners, for most movie-going animation fans, like this is an all-timer. And so I'm not going to try and approach this in just like how we typically do movie viewings. I'm not going to be like, oh, wasn't it funny when they did this? Oh, remember when they did that? Because like everybody knows this movie. So I want to try and approach it because of how I value it now as an adult. Because when I was a kid, Aladdin was my favorite Disney movie, partly because it came out at the right time. I was 5 when it came out, and I was just told you this funny story that our mom always likes to say, because obviously she would take me to these movies, and she, for whatever reason, thought this movie was going to suck. And I don't know why. She was not anti-Disney, but just maybe the commercials weren't selling her. I think we should look at the commercials and see if they do a good job of selling it or something. Mm-hmm. But obviously we did not walk away from it feeling that way. And this movie kind of became one of my obsessions, and that expanded to when like there was like video games, when it got sequels and a TV show and stuff like that, because they obviously made they franchised it, mm-hmm. And so it held a lot of nostalgic value for me. And then around the time of like college and adulthood, when I revisited it as an animation student and as a lover of filmmaking, I gained so much more respect for it beyond just the nostalgic. Oh, it's a good movie. I think yes, this is a quintessential piece of my childhood, but as an adult and a fan of animation, filmmaking, storytelling with a more critical and observant eye, I love it now because I think it is such a smartly written, crafted, and like tightly paced film with an excellent grasp of structure, pacing, character, ambience. It's so, I don't know, this is kind of like everything that Disney can do good in their movies combined into one movie.
Yeah, I think, just to lay some groundwork on how we felt about this movie as kids. I don't believe I saw this in theaters with you guys.
You would have been
I was 2. Yeah. But
VHS.
We owned the VHS, and it has about as high praise as you can give for a movie. We watched it so much that we had to replace this VHS twice while we were growing up. Yeah, we watched it so much that we wore out the tapes. And so we had to replace this movie twice, and it is, I got to watch it again before this podcast, and I, just revisiting it, it is such a special movie for so many reasons. I think between its like excellent pacing, the like phenomenal, I think characters that are built in such little time, and I think for a lot of us, this truly, like, I know he's a genie, but also just like this magical role done by Robin Williams. Like
it's like the one he was born to play.
it's truly like unbelievable. Watching it back now, it with just like an eye toward just knowing a little bit more about acting, the way he creates this character with his voice is unbelievable. And there's a lot of like funny like pop culture-y things he jumps into in this movie, but beyond that, he really just creates this unbelievable, fully realized, fully actualized, like 3-dimensional character out of this. I think in a even slightly less skilled actor's hands, kind of just like a dumb bit of comedic relief.
This is it so easily could have been an obnoxious character.
Correct.
And I think part of that is they know, because he has his sweet moments, but it's like 90% rapid fire jokes and visuals and impressions, and it's like, so if you actually look at it, I think Genie is only in the movie for maybe 20 to 25 minutes of a 90-minute movie, and I'm sure that's because they're like, we know that this stuff is amazing, but if we give you too much, you're going to get burned out just because of how rapid it is.
Yeah, I mean, you find yourself, whenever Genie's not on screen, wanting Genie, which is probably what you want.
It's better than going, that's too much Genie.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and there's other stuff. Like, I want to just touch on real quick. I researched some of the stuff about its conception and production, because there was a bit of a struggle in one thing. Because do you know who Alan Menken and Howard Ashman were?
Yes, I do.
So they were I believe Ashman was a lyricist, and Alan Menken did the melodies. They blew up with Little Shop of Horrors. Mm-hmm. And so kind of continuing the tradition of getting like the Lopez's and Lin-Manuel Miranda, like people who blew up on Broadway. Disney first recruited them for Little Mermaid, so great songs there. Beauty and the Beast, great songs there. And they were trying to get them to do this. The tragedy is that even right before Beauty and the Beast came out, Ashman died of AIDS.
Right.
So Alan Menken brought in another, I believe it was Tim Rice, who worked on Lion King. And fit to finish, like I think one or two of the songs were not Ashman involved, but amazing soundtrack of like both the instrumental and these songs are all iconic. There isn't a dud among them, and they all have different flavors and different reasons for being in the movie and different pace, and it's just that was a terrible chef's kiss. That wasn't a chef's kiss. That was just this movie's so
Yeah, well, especially when you consider some of the best cutting ever done for a movie, especially because we are thanks to DVD extras and behind the scenes stuff, we know how different this movie was originally. Yes. There was so many changes made just over the course of production.
Yes.
And they found these pretty remarkable ways. They had all this backstory for Aladdin's character with his mom and these human friends, and basically either because things felt too drab or too sad, or also just for time, and so that they could focus more on the characters they wanted to focus on. They ended up cutting a lot of these things.
Yeah.
But they you look back on some of this stuff, and they were trying to find functional ways to humanize and give you some background for this character, and they so succeed with so little. I mean, we get it's funny watching back. That iconic Street Rat song that Aladdin sings to himself.
One Jump Ahead?
No.
Like a reprise.
Street Rat, Riff Raff.
It's so good.
That's the one I really remember, and it's only
half a minute.
Half a minute long, and it's
beautiful.
And it's beautiful, and it's so wonderful, but it is they are so sparse with so many things in this movie.
But not in a bad way.
But not in a bad way.
They know when to hold out.
In a very just considerate way. I don't know. I think the movie's kind of a masterpiece. There's a million things I like about it, but I'll get to them as you're going through it.
Yeah, let's go through it. So I want to say two things at the beginning. It's one, so that Rob Williams plays that merchant narrator.
Yeah, I didn't when I was a kid, but I think when I was getting a little bit older, I finally just realized.
Yeah, two things, because obviously the improv, all the parts where he's doing the products, it will not break, oh, it broke, he improvs all that.
I'm sure.
And the original draft had an ending reveal where he was shown to be the freed genie in a human form. They obviously that's abandoned, and canonically he's his own guy. But it is just it's also just a fun touch that you have Robin Williams in a little dual role.
Oh yeah.
And then so the actual story starts. I think it's interesting. So before we see our hero at all, we get an extended and initially very calm scene introducing our villain. But I love how Jafar is introduced with these nighttime shadows kind of obscuring him, and initially he's very quiet and ominous. But it's to ease you into it. It's like you're watching this movie. Let's settle you in, and then the beetle flies up. Here's the cave and that sort of stuff. And there's spurts of it, when it freaks out and slams Kutchat and kills Gazim. The guy who wasn't worthy.
Yeah.
And I want to say about Jafar, he's one of my favorite Disney villains and Disney characters.
Me too.
Also, props to his voice, Jonathan Freeman, who's primarily a stage actor. He actually played him on Broadway for a while when they did the adaptation.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Of course. But I think what makes him such a great villain for this kind of movie is because this is a movie that wonderfully balances being zany, cartoony, and hyper with emotional and quiet and character-driven. And he is capable of, from moment to moment, being legit menacing and legit funny in a way that doesn't feel like a betrayal of either.
Yeah, one particular moment in this movie that maybe I didn't give it its credit when I was younger, but upon rewatching it just a couple weeks ago, the reprise of Prince Ali
when
he gains power is one of the greatest villain moments for me in Disney movies. It is at all times slightly funny, but very menacing, very scary, very dramatic.
He's taking everyone out.
He's taking everyone out in moments, and it doesn't feel like a throwaway villain song. It feels like this huge split in
It's a big
everything
turning
we've already
point.
known. It's a huge turning point. And I really like, I mean, props to the acting, but gosh, props to the writing.
And animation.
And animation. It's really unbelievable.
I believe, because back in the day, Disney had the way 2D productions work is that you have a head animator for the key poses and you have like in between and stuff like that. Jafar's head guy was Andreas Deja, who went on to animate Scar, another fantastic villain.
Yeah.
And I find it interesting. After that, he did Hercules, the character. So he
Oh.
got to, that must have been very different for him.
Yeah.
To go from menacing to a lovable oaf, kind of. And so, but I think that shows versatility.
Yeah, and I think, it does something that, Disney has a villain formula that they use very, very often that I think sometimes they succeed very well and sometimes it's a little bit more annoying, but that I think they really nailed in this one is that, the villain and their zanier henchmen. I mean, we have it, in Hercules, it's Hades has pain and panic.
Yes.
In, Lion King, we've got
hyenas.
the hyenas. It's a pretty prevalent thing in these movies. Gaston has...
LeFou.
Yeah, LeFou, who I think, they do this thing pretty well, but this may be my favorite version of that.
This was also, I think, most of our age introduction to Gilbert Gottfried.
Yeah.
He wasn't that big before this.
Yeah,
He had
and-
small roles, he was a comedian, and now I'm like... that's a case where I don't even hear Gilbert Gottfried and know when I'm in the roles. I'm like, oh, it's Iago.
Yeah, and I think Iago is really interesting because unlike a lot of these other like villain henchman pairings in a lot of these other Disney movies, is that he is in this movie like as much as Jafar.
He's always
like,
on his shoulder.
He's always there, and he is just a like really fun foil for this character who lets Jafar. Jafar shuts him up when he's in his more like intense, like kind of more menacing moments. But Jafar also joins right in with him when he's in his more like zany moments that kind of highlight
moments.
the kind of insanity of Jafar. And I think the pairing is something that does a really wonderful job of creating some levity in the like really menacing moments for Jafar. I think it's just really well done, and it's maybe my favorite villain henchman pairing done in the Disney movies.
He's wonderful. So after we get their introduction to them, because also remember Iago keeps the facade of being classic cartoon parrot, which is, for the record, since we talked about our parrots don't work where you say something and just start repeating that instantly. You got to train them to say a certain thing. So like Squawks isn't just going to say the lamp. It's like, no, that doesn't work. They don't work like that. You got to train them like a dog. But then we cut to introduction to Aladdin, and it's both a great fast-paced moment. Again, it's kind of a smash cut because you've got like Jafar quietly going, "I must find this diamond in the rough," and then "Stop thief!" And it's just like
it goes from intense to very fun.
You're
very
in
quickly.
you're in a different world now because this is the villain's life in ways to the hero's life in ways, and this song teaches you get Aladdin in like an instant.
And you're also
his personality.
You're also introduced to the scariest character in any Disney movie, which is the woman who says, "Still, I think he's rather tasty."
When I was a kid, I was like, does she want to eat him? And then I'm like, oh, that's a predator.
Yeah, she's a very scary woman. But I think it's amazing. It's one of these like phenomenal action-packed moments where we learn half of what we need to know about Aladdin right off the bat. But I think that we get the second half in the moment when he stops that prince from whipping that child
Prince
in front
Ahmed,
of in front of the palace there, and then sings the Street Rat song.
I think both that and I think it's the same kids he gives the bread to.
I think you're correct about that.
It definitely establishes his moral code that he's kind of like an honorable thief in a way. And it also shows that he and Abu work in synchronicity, combined with later when they steal the watermelon when they meet Jasmine and stuff like that.
Yep.
I also I forgot about that. I didn't forget about Abu, but I forgot that he's kind of a jerk in this first movie, more so because they meld him out into sequels and shows because he had to be paired up with Iago so much, who's just a bastard.
Yeah, and they make him a more reluctant like kind of hero character, but he's super lovable, but he causes his problem. He picks up the lamp, he does all these things.
He's constantly trying to get treasure.
He's stealing the gem in the cave.
At the end of Friend Like Me, where he's scooping them, how many is that?
Oh, yeah.
And at the end, he's like pulling it's all gone. He's like trying to shake out. He's like, ah.
Oh yeah.
And props to Frank Welker, who's like one of the best animal voices in the business.
As always.
Like the monkey voice. Like when I heard him in Dexter's Lab, I was like, there's Abu and stuff like that. And so next part is, because we've talked about these introductions, I do also want to say that pausing and rewinding my Blu-ray rip of this movie, because I didn't want to just stream it on Disney Plus, I want the highest quality possible and freeze and stuff, because I've gotten into more studying animation, like in between stuff like that. I even did that with the new Space Jam. Like there's great props to the animators in that movie, and there's a lot of interesting techniques there. And if you want some fun ones, try like when Aladdin's doing and Abu are doing like rapid movements. They do some real squash and stretch and smears, so like they really distort and get stretched out. And it looks really silly to freeze frame it, but it just makes for such dynamic, fun movement.
Well, yeah, you want to talk about animation. This was like this is a huge thing because I know we'd seen Beauty and the Beast where there was like that one iconic moment where we get like the camera panning around the 3D ballroom while they're dancing.
Early creation of CG.
But we get to see in this movie like things that don't look phenomenal now, but at the time were like revolutionary. Like the moment when they're escaping, flying on the carpet, and also the moment where Aladdin is on the snowy mountainside and the rolling tower with the keyhole.
The tower.
That still does look good.
That's an intense moment. Yeah, no, if you freeze frame the walls of the Cave of Wonders in that like first person part, they look very blurry textured. They look like a PS1 game almost. Actually, I think another one that holds up really well, the Cave of Wonders head is CG.
Yes, yeah, and actually that one holds up better than anything.
That one fooled me as a kid because it's in the shadows. I thought it was hand drawn.
And it's a lot of, I think, I don't know nearly as much about animation as you do, but you can see these new techniques at play that are used very sparingly but very strongly when they are used.
Actually is the thing of Disney early adopting something. This was their only their second movie that was animated digitally, that was 2D. Like they still would do pencil drawing, and then they would scan them in and work on them for like sharper resolution, that sort of stuff.
Right.
They used it in parts of Little Mermaid, and then their first all digital was actually Rescuers Down Under.
Okay.
So that came out in between, and then Beauty and the Beast. I guess this was their third, because Beauty and the Beast did that. And I do want to touch on that technology was developed by some fairly new at the time company called Pixar. Maybe they should try and work on some more stuff together. It might be cool.
Yeah, it could be good.
I wonder what happened to them. Next scene, after Aladdin's introduction and that beautiful song and such, I also wanted to say this movie has great scene transitions, like a real rhythm to it. Like when Jafar is first, you kind of, like when he's walking away from the Sultan, he's like, soon someday I'll be tall, and then I shove the cracker down his throat. You get this harsh slam, like door shut on his lair, and just move on to the next scene. And they do the opposite for emotional moments, like when Raja helps Jasmine leave, he just lays down and whimpers, and that's the end of that scene. Like establishing a harsh tone, a sad tone. It's like it's all baked into the rhythm and the timing and the structure. It gets everything across so well.
Yeah, and I think speaking of which, I think Jasmine continues to be one of my favorite Disney princesses of all time. I think she's phenomenal. I think the way they kind of handle her juxtaposed story with Aladdin, where she has this desperate want to be out and free, and he has this desperate need just for others. Essentially, the way that they kind of depict their
two sides of the same coin.
Two sides. She feels she's very developed, and she doesn't feel like a kind of a damsel or just a character for Aladdin to want. She is
she's got a brain to her. Actually, one of my favorite, I'm just giving a little bit, one of my favorite little moments is after A Whole New World. You expect she is swept up at the moment. She literally goes, oh, it's all magical and stuff, it's beautiful.
Right.
But I love how she gets into slip by mentioning Abu. You actually see, there's a great animation moment where you can see her thinking for a second, like, oh, I got an idea.
Yeah.
And it's just like she's still sharp, and that's the constant thing, and like her being very open with how much she hates Jafar and that sort of stuff in her dad's decisions.
I've always thought about this moment in this movie that is like truly like it feels like a big screw you to Superman in a way that I really like, which is that it's like we see all these things, like back in the day, especially with Superman stuff, where it's like, oh, he changed his clothes and changed his like hair a little bit. Nobody can recognize him, and it's like when he becomes Prince Ali and all that stuff, it's like we are watching this thing where like he still looks like Aladdin and sounds like Aladdin, and it's like I'm a fan of the fact that they don't like. She knows. She gets it almost immediately.
That is my one logic hole in this. Jafar doesn't recognize him at all. That's the one mistake I think they should have done something.
I wonder, but I also, in my mind, and maybe you're right about that, but in my mind, Jafar didn't like think of him much of as a person, like didn't really care about him.
He didn't look down on him, but I'm like, they get really close up to each other.
Yeah, but I think it's perhaps a little different there.
Maybe they wrote themselves into a corner and we're like, we just gotta roll with this.
Yeah.
Because everything else is so well done. But yeah, so we get them meeting each other. It's like, and people talk about this. Any story where people fall in love in a single day is far-fetched, but their time together with stuff like doing the pole vaulting and I'm a fast learner and besides that, like, man, this makes sense. It makes sense why you guys are liking each other, because you got some of the same ideals, you got some of the same talents and stuff like that. And also, I do want to bring up a recurring. It's not even a gag. It becomes a plot point. Aladdin is really good with his wits. Because, Jasmine's going to get her arm cut off for shoplifting, accidentally. And then he does the whole thing, like, she's my crazy sister, let's take her to the doctor. And she plays along with the camel. Hello.
Oh, yeah.
Not that one. She thinks the monkey is the sultan and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you think that could be a one-off thing just to get her out of trouble, but there are two other key plot points, including, like, literally how the day is saved, where he does that. And it's just so... It gives you a good idea of how he survived for so long in his situation. I think a great... visual gag is with the fact that Jafar does the old man disguise because he doesn't want to I'm sure it's like if he reveals himself then sort of Aladdin survives, he could rat him out,
right?
But I love a thing they do clearly for the audience where he has his back turned to Aladdin and Iago shows that he's the hunchback. He's like, hurry up, I'm dying in here, and that's the way to like clue you in the audience without doing something dumb like he takes the mask off for no reason. It's like you get it. It also prevents the inverse, like if Aladdin saw Jafar when he tried to be Prince Ali, he would clearly be like, but it helps that, like, to him, he's never met this guy. Another of my favorite scene transitions, when he's like, do we have a deal? And then it hard cut to, like, a sandstorm and, like, blaring music. It's, like, to show you the harsh elements. I also want to touch on, animation-wise, the carpet, once they get inside. Mm-hmm. And did you know that his body was CG?
I actually didn't know that.
Because he's got such a complicated pattern. Yeah. So the tassel hands are hand-drawn.
Right.
And especially because he, like, picks stuff up, like, he'll dust off a Boo's hat and stuff.
But with all the different, like, configurations he
that
gets
would be a nightmare to do, and like, even, like, if you watch the sequels in the show, because he was hand-drawn, they had to simplify it.
Okay.
And, but it's also, I read about, like, what a challenge it was, like, how do we make a rug emote when we're not, like, changing the shape at all?
Well, they do it very effectively.
They do it very well, like, he's dejected, he's happy. I love when Jasmine's, like, telling me the truth, and basically... Carpet has like one tassel on like a chin and he gestures the other like it's charming. And so we get to the escape from Grave Wonders. I'll just say one of my favorite jokes is this is no time to panic, start panicking.
Yep, I do love that.
And do you know about people saying that it sounds like Abu says oh shit?
He does. He says oh shit. I stand by that.
Oh shit! Can you blame him?
No, he's about to. He's about to have rocks popping into lava. If any time for a Disney character to swear, it's imminent death. I think there's a lot of those Disney theories about like weird stuff happening in the animators snuck in or stuff like that. Yeah. But
you think that one's?
I believe this one is real.
I wonder if I ever meet Frank Welker, I'm going to ask him. Maybe he said it online. I don't know. I will say now I'm thinking like, man, Toy Story 3 would be better if they're just all staring down the incinerator where he just goes, well, fuck. Yeah. Would heighten the emotion so much, But this gets me to one of my favorite moments in animated movie history, which is introduction of the Genie and Genie's song. Friend Like Me is kind of incredible when you watch it by itself. It's very unique visually from the rest of the movie. It's like a conglomeration of like a bunch of different like animation and musical styles. It like takes things from like Broadway and stage shows and like it's very the moment where he's dancing with his hands, like the blown up version of his hands is like I had a book of that when we were little. Yeah, it's kind of unbelievable the way they do it, and the kind of how it's one of those things where like I can't tell which was feeding which, but like it just seems like his voice is so perfectly suited for every moment they jump to. I don't know. It's truly. They probably based the visual around it. Yeah, it's just truly unbelievable. So I have some interesting notes here about his involvement in the movie. So do you know how they convinced him to sign on? I know that some of the issues with him at release. Yes, but I don't know how they got him to sign on. So. Part of it was because they knew like he does different voices, he puts on different personas. We have this magical, all-powerful character who can shapeshift and that sort of stuff. And I think the official explanation is he can see into the far future, which is why he knows who like Ed Sullivan and all these people are. Yeah. But they did a pencil animation test of the Genie set to some of his stand-up. I've seen clips of it where I think he talks about him having multiple personalities and like heads pop out of his shoulders. And he's like, I am too. No, shut up, you, and that sort of stuff. And that's what made him to be like, okay, this could work. And the crew also, for a lot of the scenes where he's rapid fire, the way that worked was they would give him some guidelines, like here's the topic, here's some suggestions for stuff to talk about, but otherwise told him to do his thing and go wild. And his head animator, Eric Goldberg, would manually review everything recorded and select the stuff that he thought was both highlights and well suited to what they had going on. Mm-hmm. You can actually, I watched, they storyboarded a bunch of outtakes from him. And so look it up sometime. I'd say it's like one third is like, well, that's not as good as what it was in the final product.
Right.
1/3 is this is good, but it goes on really long, would throw off the pace. And then 1/3 is like, this is really good, but they had to like do a Sophie's Choice, like which one do we pick?
Yeah.
And I want to, this is another thing I'm talking about. They will often, when they have to drop like exposition or character growth, they'll do it after these big moments. Mm-hmm. So After a Friend Like Me is when he does stuff like he has to narrow down like the rules.
Yeah.
I can't kill, I can't resurrect, I can't
make someone fall in love.
And you can see Aladdin go like, when he's bringing up the love thing, because he was going to think about one of his wishes to be to hook up with Jasmine.
Yeah, and that goes right into your next version of like Aladdin showing off his wit. He like tricks him into granting
not
a wish.
being impressed. You're getting your wishes, so sit down. And so that's and this is also like I'd say this whole part's like the Act 1, Act 2 break.
Yeah.
And so I'll also say this came earlier, but one of my favorite Jafar deliveries, because it's a good part of the menacing, is when he lies to Jasmine about beheading Aladdin. Mm-hmm. And it's just that like the colors are meeting to that whispered death by beheading, and you can tell he's kind of taking pleasure in it.
Oh yeah,
he's a creep, and it's just such a it is. I realize like you don't show Aladdin alive till the next scene, but I think everybody, even a 5-year-old, knowing the logic of a kid movie, were like, okay, they did not kill the main character 20 minutes in. That'd be a very different movie.
Right, but I don't think we're meant to believe that at all.
We're not. I'm just saying. Like even kids, I think, would be like, well, that's not how it's happening. So we start the scene at the Oasis. The setup for Prince Ali, but also one of my favorite things, like you start with the jokes, like the flight attendant, the sheep, bad boy, and that sort of stuff. But then you establish real conflict and goals for Genie. Like he's no longer just a repository repository, whatever it is, for a source of jokes and stuff like that. It's like, oh, he has his own struggle. He has his own thing where it's like he has all his power, but he can't. He's a prisoner.
There's 3 moments in this movie or actually 4 moments in this movie for Genie for me that like really stick out as like emotional touchstones of this movie. And I love, the first one is probably his delivery of like, what would I wish for? Gosh, no one's ever asked me that before.
Like freedom.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you phenomenal content powers that he'd be like one of his best jokes. And
living space.
Actually, no, one of my favorite deliveries of his in that scene isn't the itty bitty living space. It's when he's like not old enough to go, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And you can hear him blowing out the mic, but they keep it and animate a poof to it.
Yeah. It
just shows like how sick he is of that feel.
Yeah.
It's so good. And then of course when we start the Prince Ali transformation, the montage of turning Abu into different things, and one of my favorite things as a kid, and still it's the split second of him as a car.
Yeah.
Because you get different animals and you just get a quick honk. And it's just so all these like there are like,
doesn't he turn into some Disney character at some point?
He might, but I feel like I went through that scene and there weren't any. But there are Pinocchio and Sebastian show up in that scene with Genie.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah,
he does. I love that. Oh, should be right. Whoop! And he does the long nose, and then he's doing the King recipes, Alaskan King crab, and you hear a little bit of. Oh, I hate when they do that. R.I.P. Sebastian's original actor. He died recently.
I know, it's so sad.
David Diggs was sending out tributes. So we get that, and we also a smart thing they do with Jafar here is. It would be so easy for him to like feel like he doesn't have any purpose when he's lost the lamp.
Right.
But then he gets the idea because he assumes it's gone forever with a lot. He lost his one shot. We can go to the cave now. And so Iago actually has the idea like, why don't we fake this loophole where Jasmine can marry you, and that gives you the power to be a new sultan.
Yeah.
And also
because he's still. I mean, the fact of the matter is, even without the lamp, he still is a sorcerer.
He's still scheming.
He's still scheming. He's still got that like mind control power.
Yes, the Cobra staff and so on. And I also because this soon after like right before Prince Ali, he does it a second time, and I love the fact that it's also one of my favorite gags to keep him feeling like a carbon copy. He just stops. But you're so old. It gets me hard every time. Like, he sees through the bull. It's so obvious, like how wrong is he mentally sees through the bullshit. Like,
yeah,
it's so good. And so Prince Ali's introduction, it's another over-the-top song More grounded than, in some ways, than Friend Like Me because it's still taking place in the real world.
But still very, like...
Bombastic.
And also, like, musically inspired, like, you know, with the, like, true, like, choreography and, like, over-the-top set that is, like, they're coming through. It's just, so fun.
They're just, like, people carrying so many ridiculous things. I think they have, like, bird cages stacked on bird cages for, like, an exotic collection, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
And I do want to mention our dad has loved to sing the chorus for almost 30 years. This movie's almost 30 years old.
Ugh.
Yeah. To think about that, people our age. But he always does the line, genuflect, show some respect, down on one knee.
Yeah.
And I also want to touch on when Aladdin comes in and is, introducing himself to the Sultan and Jafar and stuff. The movie goes full Looney Tunes for a second when the Sultan tries the carpet and it's hounding Iago.
Yeah.
I love he smashes the column, and instead of bird spinning, he's got little Sultans. It's just like there are these moments where they're like, we're gonna go full zany with this, but it suits it because of the sense of humor they've been consistent with. There's not a part of this movie where it feels like the tone breaks. Like, sometimes you can have an animated movie or a video game that, like, we've talked about, like Sonic trying to take itself too seriously and stuff like that. Like, Aladdin knows when to be emotional or foreboding or dark, but it doesn't do it in a way that betrays what has come before it.
Yeah, I mean...
It knows its identity.
I mean, like, Robin Williams is, not to keep just harping on how great he is in this, but
it's okay.
But he's the king of that in this movie. I mean, there's two times where, like, really stands out to me. The first being, the time where Aladdin inevitably tells him that he needs his final wish.
Yeah,
and Robin Williams is, like, betrayed by him, and he has that funny, like, popping back into his lamp and, like, ignoring Aladdin.
Raspberrying him.
And, like, raspberrying him out of the lamp. That is, like, both very touching and also still a funny moment, followed almost immediately by when Aladdin is captured and thrown into the water.
Well, that's before.
Oh, okay. And is underwater, and Robin Williams pops out and, saves him, but he's, says basically can't do it without the wish and all that.
I'll take that as a yes.
It's a very funny moment, but it's also, like, very touching, and you can tell, like,
intense.
Very intense. There's a lot of fear in it, and it's, I don't know, a really well done moment.
Yeah, and I always think of, like, right after that he goes to yell, doing a German Das Boot type impression.
Yes.
Like, Opteroscope, and then he yells a bunch of German, but then, like, you have the real down to earth, like, don't scare me like that, and the hug, and I'm getting fond of you. Like, even as a kid, I was like, oh, they have a real camaraderie by this point, and that's so sweet.
And that is why the heartbreak of him kind of turning on him a minute later is even more
devastating. And you can see in his eye, like, his design changes to be more gigantic and hulking and shadowy because he's working for an evil guy now.
Yeah.
But he looks so heartbroken.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I have to do this. These are the rules of the lamp. The Prince Ali and Whole New World is bookended by a lot of conversations. You've got first between Ali, Jafar, and the Sultan, then Aladdin and Genie, then Ali and Jasmine, and one more. I feel like one more after that might have been overkill, but then they know the right time to pull out, like, the most famous song in the movie, which is actually one of the shorter ones. Like, it has one verse basically, but it's a touching and funny and like, enthralling moment.
Yeah,
like, you can totally get like that. This kind of wins her over on Prince Ali.
And it's really, it's, like, just very beautiful. It's, like, a very fun, kind of amazing movie moment.
Yes, and I will say people have noted, like, man, I guess one of the powers includes being able to show the entire Eastern Hemisphere in the span of an evening.
Yep.
There's actually a comic I saw where it shows, like, this is the speed they must have been going. They look like they're in, like, a centrifuge.
I'm willing to suspend my disbelief.
Yes, and I mentioned Jasmine mentioning Abu and kind of exposing him like that, but he still can't get himself to
tell the truth.
Yeah, he has so many chances. It would have been a very different movie if it happened, but it wouldn't have been as interesting. And okay, so after that, another great harsh transition. when he takes her back to her room and is lying back, looking at the stars, like, things are going right, and then boom, the guard's shadowy hands jump in and bound him up, and it just all goes to shit. It's a real, like, oh, like, if you see something the first time, it catches you off guard. It's intentional, and it's a real, like, oh. And it's another moment showing how horrible Jafar is. Like, he just won't commit murder for petty reasons. And this is going to be something that, if this movie was standalone, it would be no big deal. But even as a kid, I was like, do you remember who Razul is, the head guard?
Yeah.
So Razul's last appearance in this movie is throwing Aladdin to his death off a cliff and laughing. But even after Aladdin is become a hero and lives with him, Razul stays with the palace guard. So I guess Aladdin forgave him for that. And then in Return of Jafar, he's framed for murder, and Razul's the one who's going to behead him. I'm like, Aladdin, why don't you just tell the Sultan to fire this guy? He's not good news.
I can't speak to that, but it does seem a bit odd.
Yeah, though great job by Jim Cummings as
Yep.
visual. Like that's another thing I associate with him, and
It's nice to hear Pete come out and do that.
he's totally Pete.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another we talked about the drowning scene, and so then this is kind of the bookend to the third act where he gets Solon gets hypnotized again and is going to try and force the marriage. And I think a great line to show another scummy side of Jafar. Do you remember what he says when Jasmine gasps?
No.
You're speechless, I see. I find quality in a wife.
Oh, yes.
And it becomes clearly like he does have some genuine lust for her, but it's like she would only be a trophy wife. It would be a horrible relationship.
I mean, we can see that when he, sorcerers her outfit later in the movie.
The Princess Leia slave outfit, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then, Jafar is disposed, Aladdin notices the staff, and it's a key moment because Jafar has to hide, but, while he's getting dragged away, he sees in the turban the lamp and immediately puts it all together. And that sets things up. And when it's another great thing of like getting like the energy of like the bad guys think they're in a bad Iago thinks they're in a bad spot, but Jafar's like, oh, everything's about to change. He's just laughing. I think it's Iago's best moment. He has that like little monologue. We gotta get out of here. Take all the guns, the weapons, the knives, and how about this picture? I think they make a weird face in it. It's a very anachronistic joke because it sounds like it's a photograph.
Yeah.
And if you freeze frame when he's throwing stuff to the back, he throws like a pistol and brass knuckles, like stuff that wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
But one, that's something fun, and two, that was improvised by Gilbert Gottfried, and they were like, this is too funny to leave out.
Yeah.
And so Iago does that, and we talked about the that little argument, but where Aladdin says he can't free Genie with his last wish.
Right, which is absolutely devastating.
It feels like it's a hard spot for everybody. But you get this is where you start, even as I said, you get a sense like things are about to go really wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know how yet, but some of Genie's funniest moments are before that, both when he's doing like the one-man band, the
hooray for the conquering hero.
Yes, then he pulls up the script. Your line is only everyone free the genie anytime. And then my favorite, I can't do it. Sure you can. Like that must have slayed audiences. It's just so juvenile and silly.
Yeah.
And then it'd be like, the movie punches you in the gut. It was like, no, he has to stay a prisoner. And Aladdin is also feeling trapped because he's like, oh, I didn't think about the fact that they want me to rule this kingdom and I'm not cut out for this. I got to figure out how the third wish will work with this. And they make a really smart move after this. Aladdin talks to himself and gets a reality check and decides now's the time before things get too worse that he's going to tell Jasmine the truth.
Yep.
And the only thing that stops him is what happens to Jafar. But it's showing that he still has this moral compass. Like,
yes.
It could have been easily a part where you don't sympathize with him after we just told Genie. But you're like, if Jafar hadn't screwed things up, he might have been able to work things out.
Oh, yeah.
So then Jafar comes to power, and we get that great song, great menacing moment. I love the end when like his face fills the screen, he's like cackling and laughing, his shadow is overtaking Jafar and so on. It's just like oh shit. I do also love, I never noticed as a kid, when he launches off the tower to the ends of the earth, did you notice he mimes a golf club swing?
Oh, yes.
I never caught that as a kid because I wasn't familiar with golf. And man, if Carpet hadn't thought to tag along in the tower, this would have had a very bleak ending.
Yep. And in that moment, right afterwards, where like Aladdin is stuck in the cold, like kind of ready to
Himalayas or in the snowstorm,
almost like ready to give up for a moment, is like really like very beautiful and scary. And finding
Abu half frozen to death,
and Aladdin kind of giving his like, this is my fault, but I
gotta try
monologue.
He starts walking, and then he finds Carpet, and things get a better idea.
And then we've brought it up before already, but I love that moment of the tower rolling.
It's very Indiana Jonesy.
It's very Indiana Jonesy, but it's like just very cinematic. It's very cool.
Yeah, it turns into an actual blockbuster for a second. And actually, not a second, because then we get the final fight. But first, I will say, Jafar is still being a piece of shit with the trophy wife. Yep. I always love the touch when he's eating an apple and like spits something on her cheek while talking.
Oh yeah, and it's very foul.
And well, they combine that with he raises his arm. It's like, I'll teach you some respect. I didn't get what that meant as a kid, and now I'm like, fuck this guy.
Yeah.
But it's all just a good touch to show like how little he actually respects her when her whole thing has been about respect and self, like that sort of like not even self-respect but others to respect her. And here's this guy who's like the personification of the opposite of that, on top of all this lust for power that we're gonna get into. So it's another great tense moment, the initial before they start fighting, when Jeff realizes that Fake's falling in love, and so you've got stuff like Iago tries to yell and Abu subdues him. You get the bowl flung over, and then she like does the kiss, and like everybody freezes because it's like, Oh,
Aladdin's face is so good.
Aladdin's face, Jafar. I mean,
Abu does the.
Can you blame them? It's like, oh, that can't have been fun. But unfortunately, he catches the reflection. And so we have this like, it's not super long. I think Lion King is probably the longest final showdown. Like Beauty and the Beast is really short. But like the final showdown, it's very intense and bam, 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 and it's escalating.
Jafar, he's our man.
If he can't do it, great. And it's just like, and at the end, he's kind of like taking everybody out. But Jasmine the Hourglass, he turns Abu into a toy. He unravels. He basically kills Carpet. And then that like terrifying giant cobra.
Oh yeah.
Which as a kid, I thought there literally were snakes that size because of this movie.
Between that and then the other one, like big, like kind of cinematic like image that sticks in my mind from this thing is the moment where like Jasmine like finally falls into the sand in the hourglass and her hand goes out.
She's about to drown in it.
And gosh, I really love the final moment where Aladdin's about to get taken. And like you said before, it's like the kind of just winning by wits instead of strength by like, tricking him into becoming the genie at the end.
It's a great and fitting character moment for Aladdin that he doesn't find some way to beat Jafar through brute strength because that just wouldn't have worked.
Right.
But he realizes like, man, Jafar is so power hungry and just wants to be the best. So what if I tell him, oh, there's still someone better than you, and you don't know the rules of being a genie.
Yeah.
And it's really brief, but I've always loved Jafar's genie design. It's scary. It's like demonic and muscular, like. And the fact that Genie is this soft blue and Jafar is this harsh red, like if you just see the designs side by side, it kind of tells you their personalities in a moment. And
I love like the amazing like cosmic power and like even his like voice changing in the moment.
And it's higher and more reptilian for the snake.
Yeah.
He and Iago are defeated, and then we go back to comedy where they're arguing and the land gets sent to. I don't think they get sent to Cave of Wonders because Iago digs them out in Return to Far, but retcon.
Yeah.
And so then we get our finale and another. So you said there were a couple of touching Genie moments. I'm guessing one of them was "I'm free."
Well, I mean, it's even the minute before that, like where Genie,
is willing to give it up.
Is willing to give it up for Aladdin's love, for Aladdin to get his love. And then that's immediately followed by Aladdin, showing us he's learned and that it's like,
making a note,
if he can't do it as himself, he doesn't want to do it at all.
Right.
And then there's, it's like the Beauty and the Beast moment at the end where the Beast turns back
magic sparkles.
Except it's much more wonderful. It's like watching the shackles fall off is like a much
and
more
it always
powerful
bugged
thing.
me as a kid that he still wore them in the sequels and show.
I didn't understand that at all. And but the really one of my favorite like Robin Williams moments in the movie again is when he ask me for anything.
Wish for the Nile.
Wish for the Nile.
And then no way.
It's so joyful, and it's followed immediately by the moment where he like wants to see the world and like realizes he's gonna like say goodbye to his people and I don't know. I think it's magical. It's a magical ending.
But I'll also say like I feel like it hits a lot hard. It has hit a lot harder since we lost Robin Williams, because you can only feel his metaphorical because realizing how many struggles he was going through. Like as someone who deals with depression, I can't talk about the drug problems he had, but depression and stuff like that. And it's just in a fascinating position because he was a man who above else made people laugh. He was an entertainer and legendary at what he did, and it just sucks knowing what we know about how much he had to go through and giving into that sort of stuff.
Yep, but it's nice that the things that he left behind for us were the most joyous things in the world. So
yes, he left behind a lot. So
that's all. I mean, very magical.
And also I think I've brought it up on the show. His daughter is a voice actress now.
Yep.
Zelda after the game. Mm-hmm. Did you ever see the commercial he did for Zelda?
I did.
Oh, it's so wholesome. Look it up on YouTube, people. It was for I think Ocarina of Time 3DS. So that's about it for this movie. We get like another Aladdin and Jasmine get their little flying off into the moon, not the sunset. Mm-hmm. And Genie just doesn't major look. It's like one more meta thing because he actually like lifts the film reel and stuff like that. Again, he's just very breaking the fourth wall. So I think we've gotten across like why this is such a well-made movie because everything just fits. Everything just works. Everything is just spaced out and timed and executed appropriately.
The performances are pretty astoundingly good across the board.
Yeah, it's not just Robin Williams. We talked about
Scott Wangert, who's like, I only
Steve
know from Full House. It's like
nails it.
He's just fabulous.
Yes. Other ones like we said, Linda Larkin. She's done other stuff, but she is best known as Jasmine, and she nails it. I wasn't familiar with other stuff that Sultan did, but I thought he was wonderful. It's actually, that's another thing I want to bring up. When you compare it to stuff like Beauty and the Beast and the Little Mermaid, it's a very small cast.
Yeah.
And maybe that helps it be more focused because
Yeah.
you don't have characters you feel like get short shrifted.
I mean, like we said, it's like in the beginning they made cuts to like Aladdin's mom and friends because I think they really wanted to give us time with our main cast.
Yeah, so it is like if for some reason you're listening to this and you still have never seen it,
We've ruined the whole thing for you.
That's true. But I should
You should still see it.
I should have said at the beginning, go find it. If you don't, even if you don't have Disney Plus, it's on Blu-ray and DVD. You can rent it on any platform. It is easily accessible. I will also say real quick, I loved the sequels as a kid, but they are something I have not revisited because I have a feeling they will not measure up, especially to the original.
So I will say I have revisited them.
Okay, go for it.
And I will say this: Return of Jafar, the second movie, the first sequel, is pretty bad. It's pretty rough. It's pretty boring. And
it was going to be the pilot for the show, and then they let's make that a movie. It would have been better as TV episodes.
Yes, it would have. It wasn't. It doesn't have half as much like joy or fun as the original movie does, and it just feels kind of there.
Kind of like New Space Jam.
Yeah, and this is at the time too where they replaced Genie
with Dan Castellaneta.
Dan Castellaneta, who I think does a really admirable job.
But it's so different.
But it's so different, and the kind of scatological, like zany, improv-y stuff just like isn't really there.
Well, because it wasn't Robin Williams doing it; it was just some other guys.
Right, and I don't blame Dan Castellaneta for that at all.
He did a great job.
He did a great job, but it's just not the same.
Did you know what he said about taking the role? How imposing it was? He said it felt like it's the equivalent of being a stage actor and being told you're replacing Laurence Olivier.
Yeah, I mean it's bizarre, and it's again he actually does a great job with what he's given, but it's not fair.
Okay, how about King of Thieves?
But what I will say is King of Thieves, while not having quite the heart that the first one has, and not quite the story that the first one has. The individual moments, kind of beat for beat, are way more fun than Return of Jafar. I had a lot of fun rewatching it. I thought it was, it's still neither of these movies stack up to the original at all. But King of Thieves definitely has its moments, and I enjoyed it a lot more.
Would you say it works as a finale, since you have like the wedding and Iago leaving at the end and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think it. Here's what I'll say. I think if in a perfect world, Aladdin would have been the end. That would have been the finale. That would have been fine. But in the world that we had, it was kind of a great coming home after the second movie, after Return of Jafar, which is kind of it's just rough. It's boring. It feels like it short shrifts everybody because their arcs in the second movie.
Even as a kid, I was like, this is more Iago's movie than Aladdin's.
Yes, exactly. It's the only, and I will say in Return of Jafar, the only thing that is fun is Iago in that movie.
They got Gilbert Gottfried back. He probably improv some stuff.
Got Gilbert Gottfried back, and his story, kind of where his turn to light, is very fun. And he does a great job, and it's touching.
And thankfully, they didn't massacre him in later stuff. He was still a dick, but he kind of got fed up with Jafar.
Yeah, he's still a sarcastic blowhard, but he's not
evil.
Yeah.
Okay. And I will say real quick, I did skim through the remake.
Yes, I watched the remake on a plane and could not get through more than a half an hour before I turned it off. I waited till Will Smith's Genie showed up. I watched a song. I said, this is unwatchable, and I turned it off.
It's later on, I think Will Smith has good moments. They did at least make the smart decision to not try and emulate Robin Williams.
Yeah, good move.
Just do something totally different. But yeah, it lacks soul. It feels very
joyless,
awkward.
Yeah,
and the stuff they add, like Jafar wanting to go to war with the neighboring kingdom and Jasmine wanting to rule the kingdom instead of... It just doesn't click. It doesn't feel... I would have rather... I mean, I could say it's about the Everyday's remake. I would rather you take maybe the opening foundation of a movie and then do a completely new plot with those established characters.
And I will say...
I feel like the writers would have more flexibility.
Yeah, and I will say one thing that really sticks out in this live-action remake is that after the truly magical musical numbers in this movie, almost all of the musical numbers fall so flat in the live action remake. It's just they either try to do too much of the same and it just doesn't come out as well in in the live action version, or they kind of stray too far and it just feels like a cheap imitation. I don't know.
I'll tell you something that disappoints me because I was looking forward to seeing the Cobra fight. Do you know what they do instead at the end?
I didn't get to the end.
Jafar makes Iago kaiju size and he chases them through the city on the carpet.
That is boring.
It's it's a baffling decision.
Yes.
Though, and they also, maybe they were trying to make it more grounded, but they make Iago, he's basically the fake identity all the time, where he's just commenting, like, he's not doing a full conversation.
Yeah.
And it's just like, then why is he there? So yeah, we, obviously everything afterwards is a mixed bag, but that's how it is with most franchises, but there's still no denying that this first movie is just it's not even diamond in the rough, because it's not like it's hidden. It's, people know it exists. Most people would agree it's wonderful, and yeah, it's pretty easily accessible. And hopefully, it's been so much fun doing this kind of different take. And I'm glad you were so game for it.
Yeah,
it's kind of more analytical. Normally, I wouldn't do something. I would be more freeform, but this is just something where, like, if we're doing something this, like a fundamental of Disney in animation that everybody knows, then it's like, let's not just do like, oh, remember when they did this? Who could forget that? Because everybody knows.
Yeah,
so
it's fun to revisit for me, kind of as an adult. I haven't seen it in a while, and it is almost ultimate nostalgia for me. It's unbelievable.
It's best of both worlds in that it takes me back to good times in my life as in childhood, but it's also just like one of the best, like, altogether pieces of animation I've ever seen.
Yeah, like, it holds up actually phenomenally well.
It's great. So yeah, we both highly, highly, highly recommend Aladdin, the original, and that's going to bring things to a close. I want to thank you for we did it. We finally did this.
Did an episode.
This cursed episode
after
41.
Our fourth try.
That is the first time we've ever had to abandon a recording.
I'm 100% certain that you're going to get home and somehow this file is going to be corrupted,
or my laptop's going to crash on me, or it's going to crash while exporting, or I don't know. And we're just going to be like, abandon and ship.
It'll never happen.
But yeah, I don't have the next episode planned out 100% yet. I have an idea for what I want it to be, but I want to reach out to the potential guests first and see if they would want to do it. It would be something very different. Not in terms of structure like this, but like I would probably be the most obscure thing we've ever done, but it's something I want to spread the word of. And if I can't make it happen next, I'll try and make it happen in the future. But Patrick, I want to thank you again for coming on. And I know online you deleted your Twitter and some other stuff. But again, where can people find your improv work?
Yeah, so I don't really do stuff online anymore because I kind of hate social media.
Yeah.
But I will say that if you are ever interested in seeing some great live comedy in the DC area, Washington Improv Theater is returning to in-person programming. So you can come on weekends and just check our website, witdc.org, WITDC.org. I'm going to ask John to throw it in the show notes for me, where you can check out some of the shows and stop by. But also, if you are a person who lives outside of a major city or away from like a major hub of improv somewhere in the world, and it seems like something that you would really like to try, WIT is continuing to offer online classes because of the level of success they've had over COVID with having these online classes. And it actually is a great place to just try it out. So I highly recommend checking out those classes if you're ever interested. You're going to find really supportive teachers and really supportive fellow classmates. And you know, it's a great way to play pretend as an adult with a pretty stress-free environment.
Less being judged. As for me, you can find me still at Behon Art, BEHONART, on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. Though I'm spending more time on updating side accounts on Twitter, that being the WarioWare Gold Reanimated collab. Seen some cool progress there. Also, since E3, looking forward to get it together on the Switch this fall, along with Metroid Dread.
Yeah.
And also, a more acquired taste. I'm still running Bobobo out of context. Seeing great growth. We actually, I know you don't give a damn about Bobobo 1.
I don't at all.
One of the main voice actresses recently passed away, so we've been doing some little tributes to her as well. And
well, rest in peace to her.
Yeah, she did a great job. And also, I'm posting the newer episodes, show descriptions. I have a Discord server originally made for the collab, but I'm opening it up to other projects, including this, and just general talk about games, cartoons, movies, posting your own art and projects, called Diamond City Nights, as a little nod to WarioWare. So feel free to hop on and join that. Just talk about whatever. But that is going to bring episode 41 to a close. Again, Patrick, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, John. As always, it's a blast.
And I can't think of a witty joke or anything other than... Nope, got nothing.
Yep, me too. Bye!